everyone. My name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I'm very excited and honored to be interviewing a very special space champion whom I actually met at one of my first conferences, ISDC in Washington, D.C., Susan Benyo. Susan is a space nutritionist, CEO of SpaceABC and CEO of ExoGen Space, where she is dedicated to advancing space and paving the way for healthy longevity in space and beyond. Her main focus area is space nutrition. She was the first prize winner of the international competition about the Deep Space Nutrition Plan organized by the US-headquartered National Space Society. Her company created a diet app for space travelers, which the European Space Agency selected for its incubation program. Currently, she's developing space food with her team, which is quite a cool career that I talked to a lot of students about during my outreach. And so I'm very excited to learn about what drew Suzanne into this career and how she developed her career path to becoming a space nutritionist. So welcome, Suzanne. Thank you so much for taking your time to inspire the next generation of aerospace leaders.
Hello to everybody. Thank you very much, Gitika, for inviting me, and thank you very much for everyone who is listening to us.
Thank you. I'm so excited. And when I first heard your career of a space nutritionist, I realized you were the first food scientist I was interviewing on our series. So I'm very excited to learn about your career. But before we get into that, my first question for you is being a CEO of a company is, you need to have a vision. You probably had a lot of motivation that drew you into this path. And so, can you share a little bit more about Space ABC and ExoGen Space, what you're currently doing with the company, and what your future goals are with them?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Our vision is a world of multiplanetary humans with healthy longevity. But unfortunately, you cannot live long in space unless you get your eating right, because the risk of cancer can be even 11 times more, especially if we talk about deep space and long duration space flight. You can lose 1 to 2% of your bone mass within a month in space, not to mention the muscle loss, which can reach even approximately 30% even after a couple of weeks in microgravity. So there are many challenges to mitigate and to solve. And moreover, it's very important that everybody has its food preference. And the interesting thing about this, that it depends also on your genes, on your genetics, because food and your genes are always constantly interacting. Your food that you eat can switch on and switch off your relevant genes. So this is the background where we wanted to find a solution both for space, but also for here on Earth to live a healthy life where you can mitigate disease risks. Obviously, when we talk about space, there are focus areas, just like the areas that I mentioned. So first, what we did, we prepared a study about deep space food and deep space diet plans. This is the study that you mentioned also, Gitika, which became the first prize winner. And there, we identified these key focus areas and recommended a personalized diet plan based on nutrigenetics. Besides, we already at that time combined this with technological innovation. So we didn't only focus on the nutritional content of the solution, but also on the engineering part. So how this can be realized in space, especially if we talk about deep space, where you must produce everything on the spot out of in situ resources. So what is SpaceABC? What was our first product? Our first product is a space diet app. You can download it even from the app stores. And we have developed it in a way that it's aiming to mitigate disease risks that I mentioned in space, using those very special food ingredients that you can consume in space or even in a space analog mission. So everything is out of dehydrated, freeze-dried ingredients, insect-based proteins, and very special alternative proteins like soline or spirulina. So that was the first product. This has been selected by the European Space Agency. We are already an the alumni of the European Space Agency's Business Incubation Program. And already at that time, while we were developing the application, we made research activities related to technologies, space food systems. And as a next step, we are right now working on producing also dedicated functional space food. And the most important thing about our solution is that we are aiming to minimize resupply because we are planning to use so-called in situ, on the spot, in space producible resources, ingredients. And we would like to also offer a solution for shelf life issues, which is another major problem if you stay long duration in space, while keeping, obviously, our original mission that it should be healthy and mitigate disease risks in space. So this
Wow,
is where we are. So SpaceABC is the diet app, at ExoGen Space is the space food and the related space nutrition system.
wow, that's incredible. I mean, I can't imagine the amount of thought that goes into everything that astronauts do in space, let alone what they're putting into their bodies. Because as we know, there are so many short-term and long-term, effects of being in a microgravity environment, exposed to radiation. And so to see how food can play a role in not only keeping astronauts healthy and happy, but also make sure we can probably even prevent some of these, problems that occur with food is quite an interesting approach. And I've never actually learned about the process of how space food is created, developed, and tested. And so I'm curious, you kind of give a little bit of a glimpse as you were talking, but how generally do you think about these ideas, like what type of food to focus on? And then how do you actually test them and make sure, it is a good product and it's something that people or astronauts should take to space with them?
In terms of developing research and development, I can say the same thing related to processes as I could say about rocket technology, because everything is becoming more and more commercial, more and more private. So new space, the so-called new space, is just as relevant for space nutrition like for the other parts of the space sector. So I would split it into two sectors. Obviously, still the major leaders and the main developers are the national and international space agencies. There is no doubt about it, and they have wonderful experts, and they have an excellent system for the current circumstances. But there are companies just like us, SpaceABC and ExoGen Space, who are working already towards the next step, solving future issues related to human spaceflight. Because even when we talk about having settlements on Moon or on Mars, then there are still gaps in terms of the space nutrition systems. So coming back to your original question, so how it's working. So for the time being, the major developments that astronauts eat are conducted by the space agencies and their direct partners, obviously in highly sophisticated labs backed by scientific research activities, including, interestingly enough, even bed rest studies. Bed rest studies means that they lie in bed in a head down tilt position for several weeks, and there is a clinical team who is examining how they react to different types of diet. As far as I know, right now, the European Space Agency is conducting a brand new bed rest study related to nutrition. So just to give you an example. So they are doing the research and development activities not only in microgravity conditions, but also trying to simulate the conditions here on Earth as much as possible, obviously. Also, all the food items are prepared under very, very strict control, both in terms of hygiene, because obviously health is of utmost importance. And there are disruptive technologies even in this area. And obviously, when we talk about that, we can test these solutions or research activities and developments first here on the ground, let's put it this way, under extreme conditions, for example, in space analog missions. Most of our partners are space analog missions. So first, we are always keen to test it here on Earth. And then there are, thanks God, by today, there are opportunities even for private companies like us to do microgravity research. I'm very proud of our current research. This is the patch that you can see related to our latest research activities. For example, it's a very good example how we are developing our products. This batch was produced on the occasion of our so-called Mission Possible experiment that was conducted in cooperation with SpaceX on a Falcon 9 rocket launched from Vandenberg, California, and our partner were the exploration company and Genesis from the CE region. And what we did is that we launched human DNA sample to space. We did a nutrigenetic study beforehand, and we were planning to do that also afterwards. Now, the tricky part is, and that's also a learning point, obviously, for everyone, so I must tell that 95% of the mission was successful. Everything went well until the 3 rounds were made. And the plan was that the sample will be returned. But unfortunately, we lost track of the capsule. So for the time being, we don't have the samples, but there is an opportunity to repeat the mission. So hopefully next time we will receive the samples back and we can make the comparison.
I think that is the journey of spaceflight, right? Like, you learn in the process of doing it. Hey, next time you kind of probably felt like, oh, there's something I wish I could add to this experiment or something I could change a little bit, but now you have the opportunity to do that. I'm sorry that it got lost, but hopefully this is an opportunity to change something and maybe improve upon the experiment you already sent up. But that's so exciting to just hear about how much thought goes into every single aspect of from the food being opened to how the astronauts will take the food to what effects it'll have on their body. It's just so intricate. And it's an important topic. And so I actually did not know that you could become like a food scientist or go into this space in the aerospace sector. It's not a career that immediately came to my mind. And every time I talk to students, even, I'm like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I mentioned food scientist. All of them are like, wait, I want to do that. I want to become a space nutritionist or a food scientist. It sounds so cool. So, how do you get into this type of career? I mean, what from your experience being one of the pioneers and leaders in this field as a space nutritionist, what backgrounds do you think are helpful to enter this space? Do you think there's one type of career you need to have or multiple different backgrounds? How do you become a space nutritionist or a food scientist?
There are tons of ways how you can get there. I think one of the most important thing is just like in case of any businesses or in any areas that you need to be motivated. I think the best is if you have somehow a private motivational factor. In my case, it was my oldest son who wanted to become an astronaut. And this is how our thing started. So me as a mother and then a nutritionist started to dig into the scientific literature about space food. And this is all how things started. And ever since, I've been into the space sector myself as well.
Wow.
And so I simply fell in love with space. Previously, I was not really interested in science fiction. It's always my husband. So anyway, just coming back to your question. So there are very, very different ways. As you can see, this is a good example. Even if you are not an engineer, you can have research activities related to space. Moreover, I have started even a PhD program related to space medicine. So even if you haven't done previously scientific research activities, it's never too late. So you can start it. And the third point is that you can mix different disciplines, and I can hardly recommend it to you because you shouldn't believe that if you studied, let's say, only economics as a first degree, you cannot become an engineer or you cannot do a PhD in engineering. Because especially if you talk about scientific research activities, it's more than welcome that if you have a mature professional background and the motivation
Wow.
to learn new things.
Yeah, definitely. What you said, combining everything together, two different things that maybe don't seem related to each other, you can still find a career path by kind of combining your interests. And I love what you said that you can always go back and learn. Like if you didn't initially start off in this field and you just find this draw to space and you kind of find this draw to this specific area, like you mentioned, space medicine, congratulations on your the PhD program. I'm excited to see that journey for you. You can always go back and learn, right? It's never too late to pivot. So I love that. And you're sharing your kind of the aha story of what got you into space nutrition. So I'd love to hear that story. I mean, it started off as like a mother who's a nutritionist who, wanted to get into space for her son. So can you share a little bit about that story and what got you into space and then how you actually made a space for yourself as a space nutritionist? It's so hard, I think, to enter a field and make a name for yourself when you're not specifically, you don't grow up in that industry. So I'm curious how, once you discovered your love for space nutrition, how did you actually enter this field?
It was literally as part of our dinner that Barnabas came up with the plan. I mean, when he shared his plan with us that he wants to become an astronaut, he has been already studying space biology at that time,
Amazing.
so that was clear for us. And again, I need to go back to the point that it was very valuable for us that I have a background also in business and governmental relations, because that helped us a lot to communicate our plans, to win support, to secure funds, to reach out to the European Space Agency. Obviously, the endorsement by the European Space Agency means a lot uh, for us. So that's definitely part of the story, and I'm very grateful for the agency and also for the local agency who is in charge of space. So they are doing fantastic job to support the European space sector. And but you should never relax, let's put it this way, and always go out and make new connections, listen to people who are active maybe in another field related to the space sector or related technologies, because you can implement lots of learning points from their experiences.
Yeah, I think it's so incredible that you took that conversation and from there you just kind of worked to making those connections, establishing that relationship with the European Space Agency and doing what you're doing every day with so much passion. I can see in the work that you're doing that you absolutely love it. And it's amazing to see kind of that journey. And I 100% agree with you. I think networking and making connections is honestly the biggest aspect of any industry. And especially as a CEO of a company, founding something, starting something, doing it with people, supporters who are in that space in the industry who've already made established connections and can help you get there is very important. Building that community of supporters who will get you there. So it's amazing to see that you also agree with that, and that's kind of what helped you. It's incredible. And in this journey as the founder and doing something that is out of your comfort zone and you're working really hard, everyone probably thinks, this is such a journey that just came to you naturally. But I'm sure it was a lot of hard work, a lot of uncertainty that kind of got you to where you are today. And so I'm curious, did you have any obstacles in your journey? And if so, how did you overcome these obstacles?
Yeah, before I come to this question, I want to add something as to the previous question, the team, the interdisciplinary team, that's very important. But in a way that can be already connected to your next question, because we need to have a very diverse team with different backgrounds. So that can be, and that was one of the challenges for sure. And it's becoming even more a challenge as we grow, especially since now we are just in the phase of integrating our plans, our solutions with engineering. So that's definitely, again, networking helps a lot. So, or even, these interviews. I came across situations when someone was listening to a podcast with me, and then he reached out to me, and this is how we are joining forces and we'll work together in the future. Or when I was one of the key speakers at an international conference. A university professor came up to me and was interested in developing space food together. And we are now very, very close to have a joint project. So this is one of the challenges, and this is how we are working on solving this problem. So building a multidisciplinary international team, people working in different locations, in different time zones, especially if we talk about research activities, scientific research activities. For example, we are right now in a research team where the team leader is based in California. We are based here in Europe, but there are team members even in Australia. So maybe it's an operational question, but still it's a challenge to proceed and organize our activities. And obviously funding is definitely for all the startups or even for research activities, it's still very important and will be.
Yeah. I think your approach to some of these challenges you're talking about is incredible. I think we tend to doubt and be like, oh, we have to solve this problem ourselves, or we have to do everything on our own. And this is like, what I wanted to do, so I'm going to do this like this. But it's taking a step back and realizing the importance of collaboration and working with people with like-minded vision is very important. So again, to your point of networking, collaboration, reaching out on LinkedIn or watching some of these podcasts and making connections. I'm so glad that that does happen and it's still happening in this busy world and people are able to find these synergies. I think it's so important as we continue to grow in this field. Being one of the first people in this field as a space nutritionist, and I've seen so many industry professionals on LinkedIn, but you're one of the first space nutritionists who I've really talked to. How do you see this industry changing in the next 10, 15 years?
We are expecting a huge boom in this area because according to market analysis, the number of space travelers will reach more than 40,000 within 10 years or so. So that's one point. The other point is why it's becoming a more important or even more important area of the space sector because of the human space flight, long duration human space flight. So we need to provide solutions for shelf life issues, for long duration space flight, and minimizing the resupply. So minimizing resupply is very important, and that can be connected with space nutrition. So therefore, what we are right now working on, this is actually, you are the first who with I am sharing our plans going forward. We are developing a 3D printed space dietary supplement right now. There are some further engineering related solutions related to that. So hopefully next time when we speak, I can tell you us about those very special features.
So exciting. I can just imagine what it's going to look like. And as you said, space travel is evolving so much, so rapidly, and the number of people who go to space in the next 5, 10, 15 years is going to rapidly increase. And so we're going to have to cater for all those people and for the different types of space tourism we're going to have, apart from the traditional astronauts who've been to space. So I'm very excited to see how this space, this particularly, is going to evolve because I know space food, space ice cream, all that stuff has been a conversation for so long, and people have been like, oh, I want to try it. So I'm excited to see how this industry changes and maybe even evolves for the better, and how we can use some of that technology to maybe bring it back down to earth to evolve the way food is made here, or the way food supplements are made here. So it'll be an exciting field. So now that we are able to learn a little bit about your journey as well as your work, going into the future, it's very exciting to hear about this space nutrition, and more importantly, your journey in this field. So my last and final question for you, now that we're able to learn about your story, is if you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would that advice be? It could be anything related to career, business, life, just any piece of advice. If you could kind of go back to your little Susan and tell her something, what would it be?
I would definitely keep pursuing my dreams related to innovation. So that was the good part, that's for sure. What I would say to not to be afraid of entering completely new fields. So as I said, even if you studied one thing, you shouldn't think that that should be the area or that must be the area that you need to pursue throughout your life. You can change that and mix it with your previous experience. Sorry, I
I
cannot hear you
Oh,
again.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that's cutting out. I'm sorry about that. But I think that's the best advice that one can give. I think pivoting is something that's so scary, whether you're 15, 20, 25, 40, 50, no matter where you are, if you are on a path, it can be scary to pivot, right? Because you're like, I've been in this space, or this is what I've wanted to do for so long. Is it good now to enter a different industry? How do I pivot? It can be a very scary thing. So I love the advice of just take that risk. If you like it, then build a path for yourself, combine interests together, and don't be afraid to do this pivot if you have a real passion. So I will definitely keep that advice in mind as I grow along in my career, and I'm sure everyone who's listening will as well. So thank you so much, Suzanne, for doing this interview. It was so nice to speak to you again after, I think it's been 4 years since I met you at ISDC. So it's been quite a journey, and so I'm so excited to just continue watching the growth of SpaceABC, what you're doing, and how this field of space nutrition changes over time. So thank you so much for doing this interview.
Thank you very much, Gitika. Ad Astra.